Tonight's session, we're super excited, as I mentioned, to have Jamie McMillan on. She is the founder of Kick-Ass Career and Workplace Equality Ribbon Campaign. A little bit about her career. In 2002, Jamie became an iron worker when women only represented 2% in North America. Founded the Kick-Ass Careers and We Ribbon. Speaks to more than 50,000 students, parents, educators, as well as employers each year. Notable awards include a recipient of the Top 20 Under 40 Award for making an impact in the metal trades, Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program Champion Award recipient, District School Board of Niagara Technology Education Partnership Award, and Hamilton YWCA Women of Distinction Award. Welcome, Jamie. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Glad to have you back again.
Yes, thank you for having me again. And thanks to everyone that's tuning in.
Okay, awesome. So we're just gonna jump into it. This, how did your journey begin?
Well, that's a little bit of a story. It began back in 2002. I had just moved to Hamilton. I came here kind of for a one year getaway from Toronto, where I was living at the time, and I was kind of going down a bad path and I was depressed. And here I was in Hamilton, hundreds of miles away from where I was originally from, which is Timmins, Ontario. I didn't really know anyone in Hamilton, but as I was walking to the grocery store, someone pulled over beside me in a car to ask me if I had a pen that they can borrow because they needed to write down some information. And it just so happened that that person on the street that pulled over beside me happened to be my high school classmate from Timmins, Ontario, from like years earlier. And in a quick curbside conversation, we caught up, and she made me aware of an opportunity to become an iron worker because that's what she was doing. And it changed my entire life.
So what made you decide to go into, first iron workers and then eventually now the boilermaker?
So the original pursuit of becoming an iron worker was just based on this girl telling me that I can get paid to go to school and that I can work on this job site and earn while I learn. I was really somebody who struggled academically. I actually dropped out of high school. I did return to school on my parents' suggestion that I become a personal support worker. I got in as a mature student, and I really struggled. I didn't want to go to school again. I hated school. So when this person told me that I could have a job working with my hands, building and doing things, it just appealed to me. I was really good in shop classes in school. I applied. I knew nothing about it when I applied. I just walked up to the union hall one day, dropped off a resume that it was probably a horrible resume, but I did have shop classes in school. And luckily, by fate, I really believe it was fate, I ended up getting the call, and I started working this Earn While You Learn apprenticeship. And I was learning as I was going, and I was making, at the time, $17.50 an hour to be on a job site, which was my school. And it was just incredible. I fell in love with it really quickly. And I got to work across Canada, and fast forward to a few years down the road, I was actually working out in Fort McMurray. And as a journeyman iron worker, I was on a job site, and the job site came to an end for the iron workers, but the boilermakers still had work going on. And so I ended up going down to the union hall in Edmonton to find out if I could get on as a permit with the boilermakers, because they were short of workers at the time and the iron workers were on pause. And so I originally started out as a permit with the boilermakers and quickly ended up signing up for their apprenticeship. And that's how that journey began.
So what do you love about your job?
Oh my God, everything. Most everything. It's outside in the elements, it's physical, you're constantly engaged, you're using your brains, you're using, like, it's a mental thing, it's a physical thing. I love the physical aspect of my job. I like building things. I like the muscles that you gain from it. I love being out in the elements most of the time. I wouldn't have said that when it was minus 50 in Fort McMurray. But it's just amazing to see that all these structures around you are things that we build as construction workers. And then at the end of the day, when you walk away, it's not like sitting in an office where you're, doing something for someone else and it's paperwork and you don't see the results at the end of the day. This, you walk away at the end of the day and you're like, damn, I built that staircase today. Or, you know, I put up that structure and I worked with that crane, and you get to talk about all the things you do and you get to show them off. And that's really a cool thing.
What made you want to advocate to get young people and women into the trades?
So I was kind of a late bloomer with the whole computer and Hotmail. In the beginning, I think I was 33 when I got my first computer, and I got an email address, and I have no idea how, but Skills Ontario found out something about me, got my email address, and sent me this message saying that they were having this young women's dinner. It was a networking dinner, and they were looking for skilled trade women that were mentors to come and sit and talk to these young women that were at this mentorship dinner. I didn't really think anything of it, but I agreed to go because I thought it might be interesting. And I went down there and sat with this group of girls at a table who were all kind of staring at me with big eyes, and they wanted to hear about what I did. And I ended up sharing about what I did, and some of them were really inspired by it. And over the months, I kept getting messages to go back to these mentorship dinners, and it just started evolving from there. And I felt really good that I was educating these young girls about other opportunities that they were really interested in, but they had no idea that these things existed. So that ended up rolling out into more and more. Next thing you know, I'm asked at a dinner if I can be a mentor on a panel and speak on the panel. And then somebody ends up asking me one day to do a keynote. I almost shit my pants, but I got up there and did it, and sorry. And it just kept evolving from there until I actually started taking time off of work to do it, and it's just skyrocketed since then.
Awesome. So what are some of the barriers you faced going into the trades?
So it's an interesting story, but when I first got into the ironworkers, I walked to the union hall and put in a resume, and I filled out an application, and all that stuff happened. I didn't hear from them for 2 months, but here's my name. My name is Jamie, right? So Jamie's, when I was young, was a boy's name. And so when I got the letter in the mail, it said Mr. McMillan. So I'm wondering sometimes if I got in because they thought I was a man. I remember showing up at the union hall and them being shocked that I was a female, and that's happened on jobs as well. I get there and they're like, what? There has been barriers. I mean, I've dealt with all kinds of things since I've been on the job site. There's sometimes the physical barriers, there's the mental barriers, the emotional barriers, and then there are the barriers with some of the guys. There are problems. There is harassment and discrimination at times, and there is sexual harassment. But what I've learned over the years is to develop a very thick skin. I've learned how to, actually, I went to a very interesting conference years back that had a special session just for women called Snappy Comebacks, where tons of women all sat together. Well, there was men in the room too, but it was all tradeswomen, and we discussed together how to deal and manage with some of the comments that the men say. In my line of construction, we don't have an HR department. It's not like we can run to somebody and complain about it. We kind of have to go to our job steward, and there's a process, and oftentimes we'll get laid off if people see us as causing problems. So over the years, I've just learned how to deal with it. I've learned how to develop a thick skin, and I've learned how to do those snappy comebacks, but I've also learned how to draw the line and tell them when enough is enough. And I think that in the bigger picture of things, the guys have learned to respect me, and sometimes I think they might even be afraid of me. So it's worked out really well in most cases.
Do you see things changing in this aspect in the construction sector?
I see some changes happening, not as quickly as I would like them to happen. I still also see, though, that there's a lot of nepotism and favoritism. I see that a lot of people who do cause any sort of issue, whether you're male or female, you will be the first one laid off because of those issues with that nepotism and favoritism. A lot of times when you're going out to work for a company, especially in my position, I'm a dispatch worker, so I'm always working myself out of the job. So when you're going there, you can be laid off at any time, and it doesn't matter if you're making a complaint or the job is ending. You'll get moved around a lot, and if they want to get rid of you, they'll just move you to a job that day that's finishing that day, and then they'll lay you off at the end of the day. So I've seen some improvements in some cases, but a lot of times it's still the same, and it's the same for guys and girls. I don't want to say it's just about being a female, because I've seen some males get treated just as badly.
Okay. Can you talk about, before you got into the union, what job did you work that prepared you for this career?
Well, growing up, I guess I've worked in service industries. My first job was McDonald's, and I went to Tim Hortons. I worked at stores and all types of things. In my early 20s, I did become a personal support worker, which I will say is 100 times more difficult than any construction site I have ever been on. It's mentally, emotionally, physically a lot more challenging. But I think I also did a lot of work as a bartender. I worked in the service industry. I left the healthcare industry for a while. I moved to Toronto. I went through some crazy party years after I left the healthcare industry. And I worked with a lot of guys in the bar industry. And so I learned to grow a thick skin there too. So yeah, I had quite a bit of experience. I also grew up with mostly boys in my neighborhood. So I was always surrounded by guys. My best friends were guys. I had a group of girls, but at the core of it, my best friends were always the boys. My dad also used to love showing me off, because my dad wanted a boy and he got 3 girls. So I was the oldest, so I had to help with like the firewood, and he always was teaching me stuff. My parents were always buying and renovating houses. They were both workaholics, even though my mom was a nurse, my dad was a miner, and my dad would teach me all this stuff. I remember in high school, actually I was in wood shop, and another teacher came down from auto shop and pulled me out of my wood shop classroom to show me off to his boys in his class, because none of them knew how to hammer a nail. So I had some great experiences. I had a great family that taught me a lot of things, and I think I was prepared for it pretty well.
So that kind of segues into this other question, which is, what got you into the trades and what made you stay there?
Well, as I said, that girl walking on the street that day that I ran into, even though I've had very difficult times with her, we were never the best of friends. We were very confrontational with each other, but I give her credit every day, because that girl seriously saved my life. The position I was in, her education about the trades changed everything. But also, once I got into the trades, it was going to work every day. I was getting up, and I had a purpose to get out of bed. I wanted to get out of bed to go to these job sites and learn all this stuff. And I was at one point the only girl on a job site with 400 men, and they were teaching me, and they were so good to me. And I was able to, I wasn't just put on things like fire watch and safety. I was actually really ambitious, and I wanted to learn. So they were teaching me, and I was taking everything in like this big sponge. And when I started to see the benefits of what I was learning, like all of a sudden I have this really nice weld, or I can cut with the torch really well, and these things are going up, and I was getting muscular and physically in shape better than ever. And I just loved it. I loved the camaraderie at work. I liked being one of the gang. And there was obviously issues between that, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter about the negatives. The positives outweighed them by far.
Awesome. And what does a first-year apprentice make in both trades?
So when I first started in skilled trades, I was making $17.51 an hour, which when I was a PSW was pretty much what I was making. So I went from having a college certificate, making a wage, to now starting a trade, like starting at the beginning of school, working on the tools and being on my job site, which was my school, making the same amount. So it was pretty amazing. Now, in these trades, ironworking and boilermaking, you're going to start in probably mid-20s, $25, $26 an hour to start your apprenticeship. Now that's with ironworkers, boilermakers, and some of the welding trades, but some trades also have a longer apprenticeship. So for, say, electricians or maybe like a plumber, they have a longer apprenticeship period. So they start at a lower rate. They'll start at 40% of a journeyman rate, whereas we started at 60%. So most trades start between $18 and $26 an hour your first day on the school. On the job learning.
And what does a journey person make in both of these, as an iron worker as well as a boilermaker?
So I'm gonna guess across Ontario for most trades, you're talking between 40 and upwards of maybe $55 an hour. I was able to go work on contract with the linesman a few years ago with Hydro One, and it was the most I ever made per hour. That was $52 an hour, which was pretty awesome. We also have pension and benefit packages. We have really great pay structures. So a lot of times if you're working overtime, you're getting time and a half or double time. And even those hours that you're putting in, your pension and benefits are also getting that time and a half and double time, and your vacation pay. Those things are all adding up as well.
Okay, what advice do you give young men and women who want to get into this trade?
I love to go into schools and talk to students, so I have the opportunity through the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program and Skills Ontario to talk to so many students. And in fact, that's grown across North America because people talk. So I've gotten really lucky that way. I am constantly encouraging students to take shop classes. If a school has shop class, it is imperative that these students should take these classes. These are practical life skills that I do believe 100% should be part of their compulsory credits. Everyone should have to take at least a couple classes. So if you're going to own a car someday, it's just practical. Why wouldn't you take a shop class? If you want to have a home someday, it's practical. Why wouldn't you take a construction class and learn the basics of, doing all those things in construction, fixing a hole in the wall, painting, just basic skills. So when I go into schools, I talk to them and I encourage them to try their hands at these trades, try these hands at these classes and learn, because if they find out that they have a knack for working with their hands, these are careers that you go right from school, and you can do programs through schools. A lot of schools have co-op programs or apprenticeship programs, and you can go right from that right into a skilled trade right out of high school. Now, to be an 18-year-old student that's going right into a trade and you're already making between $18 and $26 an hour to start, those benefits are incredible. They can get through their apprenticeship early. And I always have this saying that I say 30 is the new 20. Because these kids, I'm telling you, by the time they're 30 years old, if they commit their life to this and put themselves first, rather than running off to try and get married and have kids and do all that stuff right away that we think we're supposed to do, if kids put themselves first and they get into these trades, if they spend the first 10 years right out of school doing this, by the time they're 30, if they've budgeted properly, they can pay off a house, they can pay off a vehicle, they can have toys, they can have traveled, they can do all these things. And it's pretty epic. I actually worked with an apprentice out west. He was 21 years old at the time, making $112,000 a year. That was pretty epic money. And he was very smart with his money. He was saving it. He got himself a house, a truck, a motorcycle, all paid off before he was 30.
That's pretty awesome, man. So let's talk a little bit about the barriers. You kind of touched on it. What are some of the challenges you see women face in this sector? You kind of touched on it a little bit before, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
Sure. The barriers there's a lot of different barriers. First, I want to mention that there's conscious bias and there's unconscious bias. The conscious bias sometimes I find men that are just insecure. They don't want us there. These construction trades are a hard job. They like to go home and complain to the wife and kids about how hard they worked all day. So they don't want to admit some girl was out there banging the steel together just as well, if not better than them. You know, there's just the guys who are just going to be difficult regardless. I don't know what their problem is. That's just how they choose to be. They don't think we belong there. They're sexist. They make comments, and there's nothing. I mean, there's sometimes nothing you could do about it except just keep your distance from them and lay down the law. And then you have to think of the unconscious bias. My dad is a great example of this. My dad is a very friendly person, a very close talker. He's 70 years old, but he's always calling people sweetie. And if he sees a woman that's trying to do something, he's going to go offer to help her, not because he's flirting with her, but because he's genuinely trying to help her. He's going to treat her like she's his daughter or his wife, or, you know, he doesn't want her to be in a bad situation. And a lot of men are like that. Especially the older folks, they think that they're helping us, and sometimes what they're really doing is hindering us, because if somebody else sees them doing the work for us, then it looks bad for us and it looks bad for them. So you have those two biases that you have to recognize. I've seen and heard a lot of different stories from a lot of different women. I think I've been lucky in some cases that I haven't had so much of a problem, because I've been a little bit more strict about laying down the law. But in the beginning, I'm going to say that I was a lot more naive. I did have issues. I do know what it's like to be harassed on the job site. I had a situation that turned out very bad for me with a general foreman, and my superintendent basically came up to me and said that, you know, if there was an issue between him and I and it couldn't be resolved, that the general foreman was a lot more important than I was. And if he had to get rid of somebody, it wasn't going to be his general foreman. And this was a case of sexual harassment. And I was asked by several guys on the job site to press charges or write a report. And you have to pick and choose your battles. If I would have done it, I probably would have been shunned by a lot of people and maybe not got a job in the future. I've since become friends with that person again, and he apologized several times for it. But it's just picking and choosing your battles and knowing when to stand up for yourself. And unfortunately, in my type of construction, it's not as easy as if you were working in a full-time plant where there was an HR department and a lot more protection in place, or policies in place.
Can you talk a little bit? I'm not sure if you remember, but can you talk a little bit from your mental health standpoint after this happened and going back to work the day after? Your supervisor said this to you. Basically, how do you keep it together? How do you, how do you maintain and do the job, basically?
Well, it was interesting because that was a job site with 400 men, and there was different trades there, and we had all our lunch trailers beside each other. So there's an ironworker trailer and the boilermakers and the pipe fitters and electricians, and I asked to switch to another gang. So I went to work for a different foreman, so I didn't have to work with that person anymore. And instead of going to the lunch trailer, I didn't want to sit in the lunch trailer, and I kind of felt like an outcast, and it was really hurtful. But it's interesting because I ended up sitting outside and I made friends with all the other tradespeople. I ended up sitting at a community table outside, and I ended up making friends. And that's how I started to become so interested and learn about the other trades, because it got me away from just the ironworkers in our trailer. And it got me, to this day, one of them is still one of my very best friends, and he's a boilermaker. And that, in the long run, it ended up being beneficial for me, even though it stung at the time. I still went to work. I still did the best job I possibly could. And to be honest, I am one of those people that thinks success is the best revenge. So now that foreman didn't have me in his crew anymore, I had to prove to him that he lost the best worker that he had did.
Awesome. Can you talk a bit, what challenges do apprentices who identify as LGBTQ2S face in this industry?
So I'll speak to it the best I can. I can't really speak to it as well because I haven't, one, had a lot of experience with them on the work site. I haven't been to too many job sites where we have had people from that community. But two, I do network with tons and tons of women, and my business partner for Kick-Ass Careers also lives in the United States, and she's part of the community, and so is some of the ambassadors on our program. So I can talk and say that I have been on a job site with one particular woman. She's a millwright. She's a hard worker, but she is constantly being scrutinized by the men. She's got a pretty thick skin about it, and she learns to joke around and roll with the punches. But I do see the struggles that she carries, even though you can't tell in the trailer when she's laughing and joking about it. It really does play a toll on her. I think that some of the people are really coming around. I know I have worked on job sites with men that have never and will never admit it. And people don't know. I have found out myself, because for some reason people feel more comfortable talking to me. But I do know that there is this stereotype, and it's starting to go away, that if you are a woman in the trades, you're automatically gay. And I've had gay women on the job site believe that I was gay, and they've picked on me for it. So, it's funny, I've had sexual harassment from females on the job too. And I think that a lot of women could identify with that.
Okay, thank you for answering that. So this next question I hear a lot when I go to a panel, and it's like, women in the construction sector or women in STEM, which is, what impacts does childcare have on women/mothers getting into the trades? And isn't this also a factor for fathers?
Oh, absolutely. That is a mother and father situation. There are a lot of single fathers out there with their kids, and I have one particular iron worker. He struggled for a lot of years with being a single dad and trying to find childcare for his kids without having family. He missed a lot of jobs. He got fired from a few jobs for leaving because of his kids. And this happens with both men and women. This industry, especially in contract construction, I don't have kids, so I can't really speak to it, but we are constantly working ourselves out of the job. We constantly have shift work. We don't know if we're going in nights, days. A lot of times you're at the end of a shift and they ask you to stay for longer hours. We work away from home a lot. When I worked out west in the oil sands, I was working with tons of men and women who had kids at home, and they're working out of camps or living in towns like Fort McMurray. I do know that a lot of, especially with the unions that I'm working with, they're starting to come out with more support for women who are getting pregnant with maternity leave. It's been a very difficult thing, but they're trying to navigate through it. I know with the ironworkers, they were the first union to actually come out with a maternity leave program, and I believe that everybody is following suit for that. So I think there are some changes. It's really difficult with our hours for daycare. I've always thought that it would be really smart to have some sort of mobile daycare, 24-hour daycare services. I always thought that if there were shutdowns, it would be smart to bring a daycare trailer for people and have that offered as part of, your shutdown schedule, that you can bring your kids to it, because you never know what your hours will be. It is coming a long way, but it still has a really long way to go.
Okay. And on the flip side, can you talk about what are some of the opportunities that you see for women who want to get into these trades, whether it's, maybe it's your specific trades, whether it's boilermaker or ironworker?
Okay. Well, the thing is that there are so many trades, and I don't want to be specific to my metal trades, because man, there is everything. When you think of everything from the ground up, you think of like underground mining, you think of space stations out there, like all of this stuff around us, all this infrastructure was built by people who use their hands, built by skilled trades professionals with top-notch engineers and project management and planners. And like, there's just so much, these architects, there's so much in this entire industry that it took me years to even wrap my head around it. The benefits of it is there's so much opportunity in so many different areas of the trades. I mean, if you love painting, you can get paid to be a painter. If you love working with concrete, you can be a cement mason. it's just so vast. So the opportunities are for people to make really good money. It offers an independent lifestyle. There's great pension and benefits. You can work anywhere in the world. You make really good money. So if you actually set your life up properly and started at an early age, you can set yourself up that you could take off a couple of years to raise your kids if you wanted to have a family. There's a lot of benefits to it. There's a lot of single moms doing it, and they were struggling financially, and then they found this job, and it completely changed their life, and it gave them the ability to provide for their families that they never had before. It just offers so much independence and financial security in a lot of cases. So to talk about the benefits, there's tons, and I can talk about that all day.
And what made you excel in your trades?
I think having a passion for it and being able to navigate through all the BS at times. There's been times, yes, where I've had really difficult days. I've had to hide behind my shield. My eyes were watering. I remember when my mom passed away, she was sick, and I had specifically asked the foreman, I said, I'm having a lot of trouble getting through my days. I don't want to be emotional with the guys. I am really emotional. I'm taking everything personally. Can you please, pop me behind a mask somewhere, get me welding, get me out of sight, out of mind. I will do my job. I've always been very ambitious. I've always wanted to work hard. I've always wanted to, I love haters because they give me the ambition and the drive to succeed. So if somebody's going to tell me I can't do something, then I want to do it more. Just to piss them off or show that I'm not going to let things get me down. Even when things do get me down, I try to work through that. And at the end of the day, I'm proud when I leave my job site because I know that I did my best.
So I kind of want to talk about, like, you're super busy. Like, I mean, not only you have a journey person one trade, you're on your way to get another journey person status and another trade, but you started two organizations, We Ribbon and Kick-Ass. So first I want to ask about We Ribbon. What is the We Ribbon campaign about?
So originally it started as a weekend fundraiser at a Women in Trades conference down in US. We just actually wanted to do something because we do this fundraiser every year to bring this really lovely woman, Sue Doro, to the conferences. And they, like years before, they'd made bracelets or pendants. And my business partner, Pat, called me and she says, we're trying to brainstorm these ideas. And everybody at this conference wears Rosie the Riveter bandanas. Well, many of the women do. And so we just started brainstorming ideas, and we came up with this idea to make a red and white polka dot ribbon because it was a color of ribbon that wasn't being used. And we called it the Workplace Equality Ribbon, and we just brought it down there and cut up a bunch of ribbons and sold them for whatever the girls would give us to pay for Sue Doro's way. And this just became something that a bunch of people latched onto, and people said, you should trademark that so that nobody steals it because it's a good idea. So we ended up trademarking it. Some magazines called us, they did articles, and from there it just grew into an awareness piece, really is what it is. And we have wonderful people that support it and wear it. And when they ask, they just say that it represents workplace equality. And it's still very new. And I've been really busy, so I haven't been able to grow it the way I want to, but it is there, and it does mean something to several people. I can't hear you.
So yes, how long has it been around, and what has been the response?
For the We Ribbon's been around for a few years. I can't remember. I think it was 2015, I believe, that we came out with it. We laid really low on it for a while, but the response has been great. Every single year when we go to the Women in Trades conference, if we don't have them, women will get upset with us. So we always have them. We're actually in the process of having car magnets made.
Okay, cool. And then Kick-Ass Careers, what does this organization do?
So when I started doing a lot more public speaking, I eventually felt the need to create a brand. And I originally started with a brand called Journeyman, and the O was a Venus symbol, and it was specifically to women because I love the word journeyman. Some people want to change it to journey person. I worked so hard for that status that I want to keep it because I truly believe it's a status just like a bachelor degree or anything else. So we called it journeyman. It's a status, not a gender. But in 2015, people were complaining that it wasn't gender neutral enough, and they felt that I was excluding the boys. So I got together with a couple of students, and they renamed it Kick-Ass Careers. It was Catholic schoolgirls actually that came up with the name. But through Kick-Ass Careers, we have a program where we go into schools, we talk, we mentor, we offer support, we run our Facebook pages. As far as I know, I've got 2 ambassadors on the line right now. One is Dee and one is Shannon. Dee is in school to become, don't blame me if I get this wrong, Dee, but I think an industrial engineering electrician or something like that. And Elizabeth is an IBEW electrician apprentice. But anyways, so we just go around and we provide whatever service to schools that we can to engage, educate, and encourage youth to consider skilled trade apprenticeships, technology programs. We're very driven and passionate about helping students succeed. And Dee is a perfect example of somebody who didn't know where she wanted to go in life. And when I ended up meeting her through the school, we quickly became friends. She became my mentee. Now she's actually my mentor at times. And we, you know, she decided to change her path in a lot of ways because of the influence I had in her life.
That's awesome. And what made you start this business?
It started to get to the point where people really loved my story. So these OYAP coordinators from all over the province that were going to these skills events that I was at started saying, hey, Jamie, would you like to come to Thunder Bay and do a speaking engagement? Would you like to come to Ottawa? And next thing you know, it went from me just showing up there for a day to them being, well, on your way here, can we book you in like 6 different schools before the nighttime event? And it just kept evolving. And now I'm taking off, you know, 8 months a year sometimes from working on the tools. And I travel all over Ontario on this like whole road tour. I feel like a rock star sometimes. And I'm just like traveling everywhere. And I get to speak to all these kids. Sometimes I'm speaking to a couple thousand kids a day, just popping into their schools. They come and sit on the gym floor in the auditorium, and I get to tell them all my story and inspire them and hang out with them. And it's just been a real huge blessing.
And what do you think the need, or what was the need you're responding to with Kick-Ass, like starting Kick-Ass Careers?
So there's a huge shortage in the skilled trades. And the unfortunate thing is they took it out of schools a long time ago. And it wasn't, even when I was in high school, I took tech programs and no one told me that I could, you know, be a carpenter, even though I got really good marks in woodworking. Nobody told me I can do all these things. So the need for people in skilled trades has grown immensely. And now we have this shortage. And you have places like the nuclear plants that need like 8,000 to 10,000 people in the next few years, and they can't get the manpower, and we have this shortage. I mean, I was out in the oil sands working on a job site with like 2,000 people, and they couldn't get enough people from across Canada to go on this job site. So I was working with people from 5 different countries, all these temporary foreign workers, and that's a lot of money that could be going to support our own economy, but it was getting shipped away when these people went home for their vacations and to see their families, because we do have that labor shortage gap. So I get asked to go into a lot of schools and community centers and different events. And now I even have employers calling me to go to their conferences all over North America now, because they want to know what I'm doing and how effectively we are working to recruit and retain a future workforce.
That's awesome. And what has been some of the response you've gotten, whether it's from the students or their parents, or, you know, yeah, just the folks that you're talking to?
So there has been some incredible responses. So again, Dee was a perfect example of this. I mean, I met her in a school and gave her my number, and she would text me, and every once in a while, if she's having a rough day, I'd pop up at her school and go hang out with her in a shop class, and the teacher was okay with it. And because I had an impact on her life, her parents ended up recognizing the change in her. And I remember I got all of a sudden invited by her family to attend her graduation. and I hadn't met the family yet, and that was the first time I got to meet them, and it was a super emotional time. It was the first time I really had that big experience of a family member that was so supportive of what their daughter wanted to do, and so happy that somebody influenced her to do that. And I've had repeated stories over and over again. Shannon, who's also on the Elizabeth, who's also on the line. Sorry, am I Shannon? Well, sorry, I'm messing up. Somebody's texting me. Anyways, I met her through a program at the YWCA, and she ended up, her and I ended up becoming friends again, text messaging each other, social media, all this kind of stuff. And then next thing you know, she gets into a trade and she's messaging me, and she wants to be an ambassador. And now she's coming out and going to schools with me, and also paying it forward and having an impact in the lives of kids. So there's been a really great amount of feedback. We have people that reach out to us all the time. One of my ambassadors, Mackenzie, just did the keynote for the Big Skills Ontario competition last week, and now she's got nonstop messages coming her way. People are so inspired. She's on her way to being a linesman, and it's just like that she's showing me and sharing some of the messages and emails she's getting, and it's just this momentum that keeps growing and growing, and I'm so inspired by these girls, and they're inspiring others just as much as they're inspiring me.
That's awesome, man. Sorry, I want to ask, do you mind if I ask Dee and Shannon a question? This is unscripted here. Can I get Dee or Shannon just to turn your videos on, and if you're okay if I ask you a question?
Hi.
Okay, so I want to ask you guys both. So this is sort of like a plug for, so the TCB, we have a next gen mentorship program that we have, you know, mentors and peer mentors and mentees. But can you talk about what made Jamie a great mentor for yourself, and the fact that she was a woman also going like in the trade? You know, can you speak a little bit about the importance of that for you?
For me, I come from a really supportive family. My mom was actually she actually was the first female police officer in my hometown. So I come from a family of trailblazers. But I am the only person in the trades. Everybody else, my dad has multiple degrees. My family just comes from a lot of multiple degrees. Everybody went to college or university. And I was in grade 12, I was all lined up to go to university for meteorology. And then I just kind of said, what the heck, let's try a shop class. I actually had to fight to get into it because they wouldn't allow me because I was too smart and I was a female. So once I was able to get in there, by chance, I was selected to be part of this team. And in turn, I met Jamie. And right when I met Jamie, everything clicked. I knew that this was the path for me. I knew that if there's people out there like Jamie who can do it, then why can't I? So it was really inspiring. And the fact that the first day I met Jamie, I was so nervous, and I kept looking at the door because my teacher, who is an amazing, amazing shop teacher, he kept saying, "Hey, you're gonna meet her today." And I was so excited. I got to get out of class, and she just said, "So, like, what's your name?" How, like, she just pulled me aside and talked to me, and all the other guys were off. They were all off making Muskoka chairs. I had already made mine, so it was so, sorry, I'm getting emotional just thinking about this day again, because that was in 2017. So Jamie is the type of person that you immediately just want to hug, and you want to tell her everything about you, and you just like kind of pour your heart out to her. I think I almost cried 3 times talking to her the first day. And she basically just said, "Hey, like, I'm proud of you." I had just met this woman and she told me she was proud of me, and I was like, I was gobsmacked. So I really do owe a lot to Jamie, and I really, truly, 100% wholeheartedly believe in what she's doing. And she may not realize it, but she is impacting so many lives, and it's so important for people to realize that the trades are an option. And I think what these conferences are doing is really, truly helping. And I think it's a really important message to get out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Dee.
No problem.
And Shannon, can I get you on for a moment? And no pressure. Shannon, awesome. I can't hear you. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Here you go. Welcome, Shannon. So I know. So talk a little bit. How did you connect with Jamie? And yeah, like in terms of, you know, from a mentor standpoint, like what's the importance has Jamie been for yourself?
I originally met Jamie back when I was doing a pre-apprenticeship program through the YWCA. She came in to meet with us girls, give us some motivation, some encouragement, kind of similar to what she did today here with you guys. You know, and it kind of set the platform for me moving forward. That was my first interaction with Jamie. It was quite some time that passed. I reached out to her a few times about different jobs opportunities and help that she could have. Dee got emotional. I'm probably going to get emotional too. I recently got a job with the local union in Hamilton. The day that I got the job went from my best day to the worst day of my life. And so I had someone who passed away, and the very next day I was supposed to start the job at a job site with a whole bunch of men, a whole bunch of people I didn't know. And truthfully, it was late in the evening. I didn't know what to do. And I called Jamie. I reached out to Jamie because she'd been there before, and she'd always said, you know, if you need me, call me. And so here I am, 9:30 at night, calling Jamie and, you know, pouring my heart out truthfully to her. And you know, she immediately went into action and you know, was supportive and called her mentor, because it is a one-off situation. And I couldn't have asked for, you know, a better sister, a better mentor, a better friend. Since then, it's kind of just blossomed, and you know, she's continued to you know, bring me out to events with the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program, so I can encourage youth and educate and kind of share my own story and hopefully make a difference, you know. So I'm very blessed to have Jamie in my life, and I hope that I can, you know, do something similar, you know, to spread the word and give back. And so thank you, Jamie, and thank you for having me here today. And well, hello everybody. Oh.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate you. Yeah. Back to you, Jamie. Like, you know, what? First of all, two questions. What, you know, for you, the importance of being a mentor, and then the second piece is hearing Dee and Shannon speak. What's coming up for you right now in your body?
This wasn't supposed to be a crying session. Iron workers don't cry. But yeah, that's a very emotional, yeah, thank you, girls. I love these girls. They've become like family, sisters, best friends. I am so honored to have them even want to support and be on my team. I'm sorry, I'm going to shut this door because I live next to a hospital, and I don't know if you guys can hear that.
And also for folks who have questions, we're going to be going into question and answer period just now. So please, you know, write any questions that you may have for Jamie in the chat. As you may think about it, you know, feel free to ask some questions and so forth. We'll be going into the Q&A. Jamie, back to you. You're saying.
Yeah, I'm just blessed to have these women that I have inspired come back into my life to let me know, and then pay it forward by becoming ambassadors on the team and sharing their stories. The whole thing behind Kick-Ass Careers is that we want to have ambassadors that are able to speak to the trades, male and female ambassadors, that are just as passionate about educating youth, that have these stories to tell. And when you're honest and vulnerable and you can share those stories with youth, it does wonders at changing the pathway that they're on. And these are two women that prove that and have really come forward. And yeah, I love you girls. Thank you for allowing them to speak in this forum.